it really is, it's counterintuitive for some people that the seminary has done its job, and it's a success story when somebody goes and then discerns, I'm not called to priesthood, you know. But then in a sense of freedom and a greater depth of relationship with Christ, they can go on to be a husband or a father or just a Christian man in the world.
Absolutely.
That's a success story, you know, that the seminary has been the place where he could go to ask the questions and let the Lord answer them, you know. And sometimes we go to seminary thinking that we know what the questions are, but the formation process, as you've described it, often brings us questions we didn't even know we had to ask ourselves. Right? But in the midst of all that, trusting that it will never be wasted time, no matter what the outcome is. As Americans, we're always looking at what the outcome is, you know. But the formation process is about what's the journey the Lord's taken me on, and what relationship with Him and His people is developing in the midst of all that. One of the things, as you've described the seminary, it sounds to me like it requires a great deal of honesty for it really to do what you've been describing. You know, that if you go in and trying to sort of hold back the truth of who you are, or you know, how you've lived, or what's going on right now in your life, that in fact the process won't work. Do you have any reflections on you know, how that's worked in your life, where you've taken the risk to be honest, and the Lord does something hard but good in you in the midst of all that?
I don't know. Maybe I'm taking a different take on it, but when I came in, I said, you know, I don't know if this is really what God wants. I don't know if really this is what I want, but I'm just going to give as much of myself to this, and kind of get thrown about in the river. Kind of get hit. I just want to get thrown onto the rocks and see what happens. See if God is going to continue to push me down the river, or if He's just going to leave me there to bake in the sun. I just want to give myself to it and not hold it back, you know, because I want to be real. I want to learn how to be real, because I feel like right now I'm not all that real. I feel like I'm holding a lot of. I've put this image forward. I've told everybody, look, my application's in now. I'm technically a seminarian for the diocese. Woo, you know. But that didn't really mean anything. I still needed a lot, and okay, I'm just gonna give myself to it. And I remember some of those first formation meetings that I had with these unknown priests that have been locked away in this castle of St. Mary's. At least that's how I kind of initially viewed it. What are they going to say? What are they going to ask me? And they just said, well, how are you doing? How's your adjustment? How do you like your room? Relax. What God needs to pull out of you, He'll pull out eventually. And it was just through normal processes, you know, normal questions, everyday things. Oh, by the way, I saw what you did with such and such, or how you interacted with so and so. Well, tell me about that. You know, what made you want to go and work with him? Or how is, you know, introduction to philosophy going? Are you liking your studies? No, not really. Well, tell me about that. You know, do you like such and such? And it was that slow process of, okay, so maybe just the stuff I'm supposed to be sharing doesn't have to come from the core every single time, but over time, it all that stuff that you're hiding begins to surface, and you didn't even realize it. And all of a sudden, it's not really as much of an issue as you thought it was. You know, your own fears were masking this, you know, the demon in the closet, and then you realize that you've been letting the demon out all along, and God's been healing what He's been needing to heal. And it didn't take a massive intervention. I mean, there were times when there needed to be, okay, tell me what's going on. We need to fix this right now. I don't really want to tell you. Well, okay, and a lot of that, it was either from the formators or that was from brothers, you know. Some of my best formation came from the guy that lived in the room next door. He'd come on, knock on my door, okay, Brian, we need to talk. This is what I'm going through. And then I would find myself a couple of days later, hey, tell me about that, but I need you to listen to me. And then let's go study for such and such a class. Yeah. And it was just that slow process of letting God leach all that stuff out. And it was not as painful, and it was not as fearful. It wasn't something I had to be afraid of like I thought early on.
I was thinking about, talking about that you focused a little while ago on the life of prayer and the importance of that. And I think that for seminary, the seminary experience to be really productive depends, just as you said, very much on being deeply rooted in the life of prayer, in the spiritual life, and allowing that to develop just as much I mean, you would assume that most of the guys who are going to seminary know how to pray. I mean, they have some prayer life to some degree,
Right.
but it comes. For me, I had already been praying the Liturgy of the Hours for some years, actually, from the time I became Catholic. But you go deeper in that, and that's something that all deacons and priests take vows to do on a daily basis. So it's not, I don't think it should be seen ever as an obligation, but it's this wonderful thing that allows you to be constantly reminded, because the reason that we have facades, the reason that we have fears that we use to protect ourselves is because life comes at you. And we often feel like we have to have something to guard ourselves, from what's going on. But what the seminary experience teaches you, what the prayer life teaches you, is that Christ is all you need.
Mm.
But so that a lot of the pulling out and the tearing down of stuff is to make you more deeply dependent upon Christ himself. That's what he's doing.
Right.
But in order to embrace that dependence and grow in that trust of the Lord, there has to be a lot of prayer going on. There has to be a lot of growth in faith in prayer. And so much of the time I found myself, when I would go through different rough periods for whatever reason, I mean, for me, and I know for most of the guys who are currently in adoration time, time just in silence in front of the Blessed Sacrament is so important. And I would find myself, time after time on my knees early in the morning when I would spend my time there. And it would be this point of, okay, I have the choice today to step out into Christ and trust him in what he's doing, or I can hold back.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that I had to step out and trust him. And I would pray, sometimes through clenched teeth, but I would pray, I'm giving this to you, let me go forward in this. Don't let me hold back, but take whatever you need to take, give whatever you need to give, and let me take that next step. And then it would come, and then you would be, okay. And it really was always wonderful, not in an immediate sense, but at some point, you would realize that you really can trust God totally. You really can trust what Christ is doing totally. But it takes that constant prayer life, because there's something inside of us that's constantly going, are you sure you can trust? Are you sure you can really let go? Is Jesus really who you think he is? And he really is, far beyond what we can imagine. He truly is wonderfully who he says he is. But we as weak human beings, with all of our baggage and all of our stuff, have to be drawn by him through this life of prayer, Liturgy of the Hours, certainly Mass every day, adoration if that draws you, rosary if that draws you, whatever it is, the concrete practices. That's the way that Christ himself gives you the strength and the courage to keep saying yes, not simply to the calling, but yes to the transformative process that's making you more free.